Hi, welcome back to part 15, The Boy at the Back of the Class. We're reading chapter 10, War and Missing Pieces. On the day after the big fight, just as Tom had guessed, Ahmet became famous. In the playground, wherever he went, people pointed and gasped and called him the boy who beat Brendan the bully. And they asked him lots of questions like, is it true that you can do 100 punches in under a minute? And what were you really fighting over? Was it your parents' ransom money? And when are you going to fight him again? Can we come and watch? After a while, Miss Hemsley began to tell everyone to leave Ahmet alone. So everyone started asking Michael and Josie and Tom and me their questions instead. I didn't say much, and neither did Michael, but Josie and Tom got so excited that they started to add new bits to the story. So that by the end of the week, most of the school believed that Ahmet hadn't just beaten up Brendan the bully, but he had fought Chris and Liam too, over a suitcase full of red diamonds and a pink basketball. All of this made Brendan the bully scale more than ever. But even though he stared at us all the time and Brendan and Liam showed us their fists whenever they saw us, they didn't chase us around the playground, or steal Josie's football, or smash into us when we were carrying our lunch trays like we thought that they would. I bet he's scared of us now that we've got Ahmed, grinned Tom. Yes, said Josie, he's a proper scaredy cat now. But Michael said he didn't like it one bit, and that he bet Brandon the bully was up to something. At first I didn't believe him, but then lots of strange things began to happen to Ahmet. The first thing happened just 2 days after the big fight. We had all been decorated a new pot for our photosynthesis plants, and Mrs. Khan had given Ahmet a golden star because his plant had grown faster than anyone else's. I think that was because every morning before Mrs. Khan called the register, he would water it and he would talk to it for 1 whole minute. I didn't know that plants could speak different languages. But when I asked Mrs. Khan about it, she said that plants could speak every language under the sun, and that the more languages they heard, the faster they grew. Ahmet was really proud of his golden star, and he got a silver one too for decorating his pot with pictures of seashells and whales and fish. And when we got back from last break that afternoon, his pot was lying broken on the floor, and his plant had been stamped on. Someone must have smashed it on purpose, because no one else's plant pots were hurt at all. Mrs. Khan said that if the person who did it didn't put their hand up right away, they would be in big trouble. But nobody did put their hand up, so the mystery of the murdered plant pot stayed a mystery. Then, almost exactly a week after the mystery of the murdered plant pot, came the day of the deathly worm tray. After assembly one morning, Mrs. Khan told us all to get our workbooks from our class trays. But when Ahmet pulled his open, he found it bursting with a whole pile of large, fat, wriggly worms. He cried out and he dropped the tray on the floor, so that all the worms went flying out across the room. That made Dean, who sits on the table behind me, be sick all over his table. Dean is scared of anything that doesn't have any legs on it, even snails, but he hates worms the most. Mr. Whittaker, the school cleaner, had to come and clean it up, and Mrs. Khan and Miss Hemsley were very angry and they checked out all of our trays. But no one else had a single worm in their tray, not even Tony the nose picker, who likes to collect all kinds of strange things in his tray. Mrs. Khan told the person who had done it to put their hand up again, and this time she looked at Brendan the bully as if she wasn't really speaking to any of us, only to him. But again, nobody put their hand up. So Mrs. Khan shook her head and said whoever was going to make sure. So Mrs. Khan shook her head and said she was going to make sure that whoever it was would be caught soon and punished, not just by her, but by Mrs. Sanders too. And then, after that, came the worst trick of all, the one that everyone in school called the Great Baked Beans Bag Trap. Every morning, right before Mrs. Khan takes the register, everyone has to put their school bag on their own special hook at the back of the class, and we're only allowed to take our PE kit or homework or lunch boxes out when we're told to. Everyone knows whose bag is where, because everyone's hook has their name on the top. Just days after the day of the deathly worm tray, Mrs. Khan told us to get up and collect our PE kits from our bags, just like she always did on Wednesdays. But when Ahmet went to get his PE kit and unzipped his rucksack, a lumpy river of baked beans burst out and splodged and splashed all over him. Everyone cried, "Ew!" and then instantly fell silent. Mrs. Khan was so angry when no one put their hand up again that she cancelled PE, and Mrs. Sanders came and told the whole class off. It was horrible, especially because Ahmet began to cry when he saw what had happened to his PE kit in his bag. I think everyone knew it was Brendan the bully, but no one could prove it, not even Mrs. Khan. After that day, the door to the classroom was locked every break time and lunchtime, which stopped anything else from happening to Ahmet's things. But I wanted more than anything for Brandon the bully to be caught and to prove that he was a criminal. So Michael brought his granddad's magnifying glass in and we searched for clues. But we couldn't find a single one, not even in the school bins. Ahmet was more upset about the great baked beans trap than any of the other things that had happened. And even though Mrs. Hemsey washed his rucksack with lots of washing up liquid, it looked even worse than before and it smelt strange too. But Ahmet still brought it to school every day. I wanted to know why he didn't just get a new one, or why Miss Hemsey kept saying that it looked fine when it didn't. And then, just 2 days after the great big baked beans bag trap, I found out. We were all putting away our books and getting ready for group story time, just like we always did on Friday, when Mrs. Khan made a surprise announcement. "Now, everyone," she said, "this is our last afternoon before we all break up for the half-term holidays, and I thought we could do with a treat. Instead of us all reading a story together, we're going to listen to one instead. And it's a very important story, because it's going to be told to us by someone very special in our class." Looking over at Ahmet and Miss Hemsey, she waved them over to where she was standing. I didn't know it just then, but I was about to have nearly all of my original 11 questions answered all in one go. We all turned around to watch Miss Hemsey, who picked up a large pile of papers from the table and followed Ahmet to the front of the class. I want everyone to listen extra carefully, and I don't want anyone asking questions until after Ahmet has finished telling his story. Is that understood? "Yes, Mrs. Khan," shouted the class. "Good." And, leaning against her desk, Mrs. Khan smiled and said, "Ahmet?" Everyone shuffled in their chairs and sat up straight, waiting for Ahmet to speak. I wondered if he'd tell the story in English or in Kurdish, but I was so excited that I didn't really care. "Hello, my name is Ahmet. I am 9 years old and I am a refugee. I come from Syria." As he said this, he pointed to Miss Hemsey, who held up a drawing showing a house and a tree and a car in front of some mountains. And in the front of the car were 4 people labelled me, Mum, Dad and Sister, and a cat. This was the drawing. I was surprised. I think that part will be read next time. Okay, bye.